Okay. Um, I guess most people know, some people don't know, maybe because a lot of the things that I cover overshadow it. But think about a point where I really want to make an effort with this brain injury thing to try to provide any helpful or beneficial um, advice or tips that I can offer. I think coming at it from an emotional point of view, I think I've made my disdain and disgust with the situation very apparent. Um, but now I think I'm at a point where I might actually be able to do something that is genuinely helpful to someone else. From that perspective, I just want people to understand that right, wrong, what you should or what you shouldn't do. If you're a caregiver, you're around someone who's experiencing a brain injury, or you yourself have a brain injury. What I personally felt like I experienced was a lot of people, they're trying, they mean well, and they're trying their best to try to um, help you and to offer you support, and they there's the positive, thing that can go in kind of a negative way. What I've learned throughout this last 14 years since my injury happened was that I really have to experience these negative emotions, acknowledge them, and then let them pass. And I know that's a Buddhist kind of a mindfulness concept that says in order to let it go, you really do genuinely need to acknowledge it, feel it, and recognize that it is going to pass. And I think maybe I interact with it way more than I should, and that's fair enough. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of times I've been surrounded by people, well meaning as they may be, who want me to express happy, positive, grateful feelings when I'm just not feeling happy, positive, grateful feelings. So I acknowledge and admit, I recognize I probably way overdo the negative thing, the negative aspects of it, and that's fair. So I'm at a point where I think I can actually objectively, if you will, look at it and say, okay, I've sat long enough with this distress and I've spent long enough in the distress, expressing the distress, and maybe I actually can now offer some genuine help to get out of the distress a little bit and to get your head above the water. So I think what I'm going to start with is I'm going to talk about how I dealt with my vertigo, because my vertigo is the thing that I feel I've done the best to overcome. So, and the emotional part of it will come with that, actually, interestingly, even though it's taken a lot longer for the emotional part than it did for the vertigo. But this is my first video, so I'm just interested in saying, Memorial Day 2006, I suffered a grade 5 subarachnoid hemorrhage. When I got to the hospital, I was, I think, like a 3 on the Glasgow coma scale, full coma. I wasn't in critical condition. They considered my condition to be grave and moribund. And then they inserted drains into my skull to drain off the blood. And almost immediately, within my understanding, is within just a very small amount of time, hours, I was already doing purposeful movement, like trying to ascertain what was going on. I was speaking the entire time according to the records and according to stories from the family members and people who were around me. And I came across very much like my normal self the entire time. You have to understand, I remember none of it. I had a headache, laid down, and went into a coma. And I don't remember anything. So um, that part of it, I think, was an emotional issue. At the same time, my hair was really long when the injury happened, and as I was lying there in the bed, I guess, and thrashing, all of it got ripped out from like the crown of my head all the way down to the back of my neck. All of my hair got ripped out. So when I came to and began, which was about 5 weeks later, and began to actually remember things and engage with things, um, I had no idea where my hair had gone. And that was a really weird thing. And then I went through many years of various different, things with that. But one thing about the gray thing, women who are, I'm almost 50 years old, and women who are going through deciding whether or not they want to let their hair gray and they're having maybe difficulty with it, I didn't struggle because I woke up basically, for all intents and purposes, I was kind of bald. Right? Like my hair was like the crypt keeper, basically. So I didn't struggle with it. When it grew back in gray, and I just kept it that way. So that's the 50-year-old woman thing that you might be dealing with in this issue from that perspective, and it's also a brain injury thing that you might be dealing with. And that's just, I think, the basics of the story that I want to get into right now. So if anybody has anything that they would like to ask me, or anything that they would specifically like me to cover, I am going to go into the vertigo part of it, the vestibular part of it, because I do feel personally as if that's the place that I have done the most good for myself in the way that I have handled things. So the emotional part I'm still working on, so if you would like to comment on that as well, I'm absolutely fine with that, and I can discuss that as well. You need to understand one thing about it. I have a brain injury. I know that I have a brain injury. I am not embarrassed about my brain injury. I do not have a problem with discussing my brain injury. I know that it's there. I accepted that it's there. And I know basically what the glitches are. I just don't always know when they're occurring until after the case. So that's like my main problem with it from an emotional point of view. And I have a tendency to blame it. Oh, this stupid injury. If I wouldn't have survived this injury. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If I wouldn't have survived this injury, I wouldn't be dealing with this right now. That's probably a very bad place to come from. However, I recognize that that's what I've been doing. So, I just want to do this. I want to do this and get that story out there and see if there's any way that I can offer some help or support for someone else going through a similar thing. Understand this did happen in 2006, so it was almost 15 years ago now. This is where I am now, emotionally and physically, and I'll cover other things as well. But I just wanted to get the story out there, and I'm going to upload this, and I'm going to see what comes of it. If I can benefit anyone, I would be remiss if I didn't do everything that I can to try to take advantage of it. That's how the only way that I feel I can develop a gratefulness for it is if I can actually get something good out of it. And the only thing that I see good coming out of it is the possibility of helping someone else. So thank you very much for your time. If you've come this far, please feel free, to comment, to let me know if there's anything specific that you'd like to ask. Share this with friends who may have brain injuries or have been going through, similar things. And I will make another video specifically on the vertigo thing later. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.